Hi there. I sent out another poll to another host of schools to see how college students are doing nowadays. The point of this poll was to learn their political affiliation in reference to what religion they are in, if any at all, and further, how zealous they are. Now, you can do a few different kinds of things with this data, as introducing 3 points of data means you have a lot of different correlations to look at. So, I looked at all of the correlations I could think of. The most interesting ones being the correlation between one's zeal and one's religious affiliation, the correlation between zeal and political affiliation, and the correlations between religious affiliation and political affiliation. Then we can compare and contrast and theorize, the works. Okay, so let's define what we're talking about here, and just how am I attempting to empirically collect data about things that sound so vague? Basically, by leaving it vague. What do I mean? Well, in getting political belief, I left the door open for interpretation. Answers included, I most identify with the right or conservative, I most identify with the left or liberal, I truly feel in between left and right centrist, and then a fill in your own response portion, in which I would delete any and all useless answers like, I don't believe in politics, because I'm special. Yeah, delete it. I can't use that. But for other responses, I usually would align them with whatever made the most sense given the whole left-right dichotomy thing, which, I get, can be arbitrary. But it's useful in getting the most information about somebody's politics and the least number of questions. For example, if somebody said they identify as socialist, I would group them in with the left. Or if somebody said they identify as libertarian, I would group them in with the right. When I came to religious affiliation portion, I asked how they identify in respects to religion or spirituality, with options including basically all the world religions, atheism, irreligious, meaning vaguely atheistic, agnostic, loosely theistic, and then I also included a spiritual response, which was kind of a mistake. I'll get into that in a second, and a fill in your own response. Now, even though I got around 200 responses, I only really got a handful of people who identified as either Muslim or Jewish by religion, so I ended up grouping them in with a large amount of Christian responses, which were largely split between Protestant non-denominational and Catholic Orthodox. So I put all of these under the religious category. The quote-unquote non-religious category refers to the irreligious people and atheistic people. Then there's the quote-unquote spiritual vote. Why did I include spiritual? I barely even know what that means. And also fill-in responses. We got Satanists and pagans and, quote, I believe in different parts of different religions. Okay? Do you see the problem? Suffice it to say, I don't know where to put these guys, so they get their own category. The other category. Then comes trying to empirically measure zeal, which is probably the most vague and oddly specific emotion to pick. So let's define it like this. The degree to which one is willing to act or suffer motivated by belief in an ideal. I understand this isn't exactly how zeal is always used in language, but this is really what I'm measuring here. Right, so here's how I went at this. To measure zeal, I asked, consider the following scenario. The United States government has turned against your personal belief system. They say your beliefs are inherently dangerous and corruptive. For this reason, all practitioners and believers of your specific belief system are ordered to disavow their beliefs. All those who do not conform are promised, quote, you will regret your decision, end quote. In this example, by the way, all Christians are considered the same. So at what point do you conform to the government's request? Then the poll essentially gives your options, which are just basically a list of breaking points at which you would conform. Now, I'll spare you and I won't read them all off, but in case you're curious, here they are. How does this measure zeal? Well, first note how it refers to, quote, your personal belief system, meaning this applies to religious and non-religious alike. Also note the order in which I laid out the options. It is, in my best estimation, an order of increasing negative intensity. So if I were to hypothetically find that one group had a higher rate of selecting I would take all punishments or the punishment of loved ones than the other, I could conclude that that group would be more zealous than the other. I hope all of this makes sense. So based on different correlations, here are the findings of the poll. First correlation. What is the zealousness of the religious in comparison to the non-religious? This excludes that prior mentioned other group. You know, the one with Satanists? Yeah, that one. So you'll notice that as you go up the graph, the zealousness responses increase. But right off the bat, you can see some large differences. First, there is a huge increase in religious votes at the end of the zealousness scale, whereas there is a large concentration of non-religious on the lower end of the zealousness scale. So, finding number 1, religious are more ardent in their ideals, or zealous, than non-religious. Moving on. Now, we can see the difference in zeal, or loyalty to beliefs if you'd rather, between political affiliations. Oh look, hey, centrists are here. Wow. But you'll notice that the trends of the conservatives largely follow the trends of the religious, and the trends of the liberals follow the non-religious. Obviously, there is a reason for this, as seen in this correlation, where we look at political makeup of each of the religious, non-religious, and others. And obviously, you see a correlation between religion and conservatism, and non-religion and liberalism. Also, quick note. Look how the other group follows almost identically in political affiliation to the non-religious. Which means... But maybe I should have put the non-religious with the other group, but eh. But hang on, there's something interesting here. The zealousness is higher in conservatives than in religious alone, which is weird, since the conservative vote is essentially the religious vote, with some non-religious tossed in, which, looking at their zealousness, you would imagine to have a watering down effect, but it doesn't, which means that there's something inherent in conservatism that lends itself to zealousness, as it is more strongly correlated with conservatism than it is in religiosity. You can see this here, where only the non-religious groups are being measured for zealousness, divided by political affiliation. Now take this one with a grain of salt, because the conservative pool is significantly smaller than the liberal pool, but it still gives us a look at what's going on here. Likewise, look at this one, where we just look at the religious broken down by political affiliation. This one too should be taken with a grain of salt, as the pool of answers being used here is not huge, but we still get a good idea of the general trend. And that is, zealousness is more closely related to self-identification as conservative rather than religious. So, what is it? What about political identity affects your zealousness in relation to religion, regardless of whether or not you're actually religious? Well, that will have to wait until next time, where we do some theorizing. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this little dive into the brains of college students. See you next time.